Hello, everyone. My name is Peyton, and I am joined by my co-host Chandler.
Hello, all. I hope you're ready for our little misadventures. And beforehand, grab a snack, grab some water, and sit down and get ready for the rest of it all.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you all for tuning in. Today, we would like to pose a question. That question being, what does it truly mean to consume media? Is it just an endless cycle of indulging in processed slop to fuel the entertainment machine? Or is there something deeper, something more profound? Can we uncover meaning, connection, and artistry amidst the noise? We would like to welcome you to a podcasting experience unlike any other, where together we'll seek the answers, venture into uncharted territory, and explore what it really means to go beyond the medium. So, this is our brand new podcast in which we will be exploring different forms of media, doing some analysis, just give our takes on stuff. Um, Ideally, we would like to cover a whole range of different topics, and maybe even expose some lesser known media to a wider audience out there. Today's episode: Transformers One and the War on Mediocrity. So, uh, yeah, today we're going to be talking about Transformers One. Uh, Came out this year in September. Um, we just watched it pretty recently. Um, I guess we can just go ahead and go into our thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. This movie really had an unfortunate marketing. It didn't sell the movie well at all. Because when you first view it, you're like, oh, it's a Transformers movie. All of them have been sloppy, and this is animated, so it's like, oh, it's going to cater to kids. But it's a lot deeper and more profound than what it is, than what you see in the trailers. Again, the trailers did not do this movie justice at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it really explores a lot of abstract ideas more than I thought would be in a Transformers movie, surprisingly. I want to go off that this movie has a lot of commentary on, autonomy, uh, again, decision making, caste
Mm-hmm.
systems, weirdly enough,
Mm-hmm.
and shows a path of two brother like characters diverging into their own respective ideas of freedom, and which ultimately tears them apart.
Yeah. Um, I think I was in a similar boat where I was also not expecting this movie to really be. I mean, I didn't even hear about this movie until you had told me about it. And this came out
Yeah,
many months ago. I think we watched it like last month or something like that.
yeah, like two over 2 weeks or something ago.
Yeah, so I didn't even hear about this movie. Like he was mentioning, the marketing of this movie really didn't do it any favors. I think it barely made back its production cost. So really
I think it
unfortunate
had a
because it was a really quality movie.
yeah, it had. So if we want to get like into like a real domestic grosses and stuff, I think the movie had like a budget of like 150. It barely made it double back. I think. Let me look at it real quick. Transformers One, just to give you guys an actual numbers to understand how devastating the gross for this movie was.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate, meaning that because of how poorly it did, it likely will not be receiving a sequel, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, it made 130 million in return, and the budget for that movie was, let me pull it up here, 75 million. So it didn't make it back at all.
Mm,
It made under, which is a damn shame.
mm. Well, I guess let's go into the analysis of the movie now. Now that we're
Yeah,
all nice and
absolutely.
depressed about about the fact that the movie's not gonna get a sequel.
Get a sequel, yeah.
Uh,
You want to?
yeah, I guess I'll start off. So yeah, I kind of wrote down my thoughts because I was ruminating on this movie a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first place to start off with is like the real heart of the movie, which is the relationship between Orion Pax and D16. Um, so yeah, the origin story of them, has been iterated upon numerous times throughout the different continuities in the Transformers universe. But I think this movie does a really great job at depicting their relationship by making them like coworkers. Um,
Right.
Originally, uh, in most continuities, from what I can remember, Orion Pax is like a data clerk, and D16 is like a minor bot who participates in gladiator fights,
Yeah.
like off duty.
Yeah, it's very like the origins are almost kind of the same every time, but they're slightly different. A lot
Hmm.
of them has him as just a straight up gladiator. Then he takes on the political scene, and then he, rendezvous with this clerk who wants to change Cybertron for the better. And D16 takes on the name Megatronus for the as his rightful name instead of going by his assigned name.
Hmm.
And they bond, and Megatronus at the time, and one of all these other continuities, takes on more of a mentorship to Orion Pax, and eventually all of the political scene turns in favor of Orion Pax because Megatronus shows his true colors, where he wants to take charge of Cybertron and have the Matrix be the Prime, and the Council and all these other versions don't necessarily like what he has to say, and they go along with Orion Pax because he's more pacifist and he's more peace oriented, and then that's how their paths break off.
Hmm.
So I do like them being starting on the same level,
Yeah, I
because a
agree.
data clerk, you know, he's not a slave essentially. He's just a dude that works, an archivist and stuff. And then you have a gladiator who's essentially a slave. So putting them on the same level so they can start on the same foundation and then diverge was an excellent touch.
Yeah, because I feel like there was always something that bothered me about Orion and D16 coming from like different backgrounds or like social classes, because it always felt like it was easier for Orion to fall into a path that was more lawful because he didn't have to suffer as much, right?
Yeah,
But when you put him
absolutely.
in the same situation and give him the same confrontation to deal with, it's more focused on their different ways of trying to resolve the problem and their mentalities.
Absolutely. And in this movie, Orion Pax, he's kind of he's a little shit starter. He's getting in trouble. He's always dragging D16 to save him.
Hmm.
And when they're confronted with the truth, I mean, if you want to get into spoilers, we most definitely can. I feel like it's kind of essential to explain
Yeah,
the
so
movie and get a depth.
there will be a discussion of spoilers of the movie. So if you are listening now and you haven't seen this movie yet, I would highly recommend that you watch this first because it's a great movie. It's got a very solid script. Um, and while the twist isn't, I think we all know that D16 is going to become Megatron. I feel like that's part of the
Shocker.
marketing for the movie, right? But the way in which it progresses, I feel like is something that is worth seeing with your own eyes the first time
Hmm.
over. So, spoilers for the movie
Yeah.
incoming.
So the
Um,
whole point. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I figured before we go into into that part, we should try and examine them individually as characters.
Yeah. So I think we should start off with the obvious, being the main character of the essentially the series, Orion Pax.
Yeah. So, um, I remember one of the first things I heard about the movie was the casting. Um, so I was a little concerned about Chris Hemsworth playing Optimus Prime, but it is a different version of the character, right? I don't feel like Peter Cullen's voice, as prolific as he is, would have fit this iteration of what they were trying to
Hmm.
go for. Um, and quite honestly, he did surprise me because he did a pretty good job. Um, I really like how throughout the progression of the movie, you get like subtleties to his voice changing and becoming uh you get more of those Cullenisms in his voice
Hmm.
once he gets the cog and then once he gets the matrix. Um, but yeah, his characterization as like a well-meaning guy who gets his friends into trouble um, by just like trying to do the right thing mostly was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool angle to take his character with, and it showed you more of like a flawed side of the character because usually Optimus Prime is just like the big badass leader who can do no wrong.
Yeah, he's like the wise leader. And it's nice seeing, this inexperienced, young, brash Orion Pax mature throughout this movie, like my co-host Payton said. It's nice to see that transformation because again, Optimus Prime is always seen as this, undisputed, respected, super, pacifistic, quiet, he's always on the mark about these things. But Orion Pax messes up a lot in this movie, for right or wrong.
Yeah, the movie opens with him committing crimes.
Yeah,
He's breaking
which
into
is
the data archives, not to like save anybody or anything like that, just because he feels like it, because he wants to
yeah,
know what's in there.
yeah, absolutely, and that's just a nice, interesting take on Optimus Prime, and it just shows how he develops throughout this entire movie. And again, it's such a fresh breath air for Transformers to have a flawed character at the beginning that's supposed to be, this well-known, developed character for God, 30 years going on,
Yeah,
and it's just a completely brand new take on Orion Pax slash Optimus Prime.
yeah, and I really enjoyed the jovial kind of um like playful scamp nature to this version of the character, where his curiosity um and optimism kind of get him into these bad situations, with ultimately it leads to D16 having to bail him out most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
D16 gets wrapped into this stuff because he's his buddy and his coworker, and they're always working together. So
Yeah, it definitely shows the reliance and kinship between the two characters.
yeah, very
Again,
believable.
very believable, more so than everything else that has been depicted in the series.
Yeah, because in many like forms of Transformers media, we never really get to see like the brothership aspect of Megatron and Optimus, because you always catch them after that point, after
Yeah,
Cybertron and stuff.
because in the original G1 series, Orion Pax and Megatron had no relation. It was just like Orion Pax ran into Megatron, and Megatron blew him up, and they just turned him into a war machine, Optimus. Orion
Hmm.
Pax turned into this unstoppable leader of the Autobots to combat the Decepticon uprising. And again, the other versions, the more recent iterations, have Orion Pax slowly become Optimus Prime. He's chosen as this like savior for the Autobots. And in this movie, it starts out with no Decepticons or Autobots. They're just all Cybertronians.
Hmm. Yeah, because the
But
concepts weren't even established at this point.
yeah, but the twist is you have miners and you have the people with cogs, and the miners are just designated to mine energon. They're small, and that's their whole purpose. Whereas all the other Cybertronians are massive at scale compared to them, and they can transform her, and they have more, luxurious life
Hmm.
options. They get to race. They have like high class houses, and we see the miners in the movie just sleeping in these little tanks underground,
Hmm.
and like essentially like a gym locker.
Yeah. So to get more into the basic plot of the movie for anyone who either hasn't seen it in a while or may have forgot some stuff. Yeah, there was a there's a difference in between the minor robots who do not have transformation cogs, and the robots who can transform. All of them being led by Sentinel Prime. Um, the crux of the movie being the point in which they head to Cybertron's surface, um, after participating in a big race. They get the attention of Sentinel Prime, which inadvertently gets them thrown into a pit where they meet Bumblebee. Um, which just quick thoughts. How did you feel about Bumblebee being played by what's his is Keegan Michael Key?
I believe
I
so.
believe he's
I get
Keegan,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's definitely different. A lot of the cases, Bumblebee. I'm just a lot of the version, like I didn't grow up with the G1 version of Bumblebee. The ones I grew up with, Bumblebee couldn't talk at
Hmm.
all. He just
Yeah.
make a little goofy sounds and talk through a radio. The only closest comparison I have to a talking Bumblebee was in the Transformers animated series in the like the mid 2000s, super hyper stylized one. And Bumblebee, he was a little shit. He would just crack jokes, be annoying. Not being like, yeah, he was annoying. Yeah, straight up. But in this one, he's he's isolated and he's going crazy. He's so bad at his jobs. They keep moving him down and down so they won't have to deal with him. And when he meets D16 and Orion, he just doesn't stop talking. And I kind of get why he doesn't stop talking is because he's been isolated for who knows how long. So he finally has the company of someone else and he just does not know how to socially interact with other
I
bots at all.
I definitely get what they were going for, but I do feel like the decision to make him into this like weird like this socially awkward guy who like talks to himself. I don't know. It didn't really work for me. I feel like that was more of a that part of the character and the movie in general with the comedy was probably to lean more towards the kid friendlier aspects.
Yeah, they wanted to get some jokes in there.
Yeah, so
Only
I could just say that, it's not really for me, but personally, I don't think he did a terrible job with the performance. He was just going for his script, but
right.
I don't know. I don't feel like this version of the character has enough substance to it, um, in the same way that some of the other side characters do, like Alita
Right.
1 or Starscream or something like that.
Yeah. Let's talk about Alita One. That's I think there's a again. This is a really weird one because in a lot of the cartoons, Alita One is not a thing. She just simply doesn't exist.
hmm
And if there's like a female Autobot that's pink, it's generally RC.
I will admit I totally thought Alita. I forgot that Alita 1 existed, to be honest with you, because I did not watch Transformers at a time in which she was
Um,
really in anything that I saw. So I just always assumed that it's RC, but it was
yeah.
not.
So I with that they it was able to give her a different take on the character, and she's trying to get her job done, be efficient, go up the promotional ranks like all the other minors. So
Yeah,
she's kind of a hard ass in the movie. So they allowed her to be, have a different interpretation of this character because again, I don't really know anything about Alita 1 until now. And the only other one example I have of Alita 1 is from the Transformers animated series where she was friends with Optimus and Sentinel in those versions. And she got bit by spiders and turned into Black Arachnia.
oh
And
man,
once it turned,
yeah. God, I
yeah,
forgot about that.
yeah, that's the only other thing. And I'm like, okay, so she's a villain in that one. And this one, not that. Completely different. So maybe in some continuities she turns to Black Arachnia. Or in that case, in that one, it was just like a one off thing, like, oh well, let's just give her a sad origin story. But this one, I I think she's a fine character.
I think she's fine. I feel like a lot of the side characters in general simply didn't get as much attention or depth as Orion Pax and D16 did, which
Absolutely.
is a fair enough thing to do because the whole point of the movie is their relationship and how it becomes what we know it to be. Um, yeah, so she was fine for what she was, but I don't know. I feel like that character needs to have more depth other than, generally being good at most things and
Right.
then being like a sub leader to Optimus.
hmm
Um, it would be nice if she had more to do in the next movie, if there is a next movie.
If there is, which I hope there is,
Yeah.
because would be awesome to see like a reiteration of like a War for Cybertron, which is a badass game by the way. You
Yes.
definitely should play it on if you can at all. Any
We will
access you
make some
can
more
have.
some
Comment.
reference to some other Transformers media afterwards, but just to get back onto the movie,
I think the next character we should discuss is the other main character who has
yeah,
a lot for us to talk about, which
yeah,
is D16.
yeah. I honestly have much more thoughts on D16 than I do Orion Pax.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like most of the interesting things about Orion Pax slash Optimus Prime in this movie are the differences between how him and D16 act. Um, but yeah, D16. So upon my first viewing of the movie when we watched it together, I did feel like his progression to Megatron was a little bit rushed. Um, However, upon a rewatch, I started to think more about how it would feel to be this guy, you know? Like, 'cause he's essentially been working his entire life to fit into this system that was constructed solely just to benefit Sentinel Prime.
Yeah,
And, you know, he idolized this person basically from birth as his leader, as like a celebrity or like a hero. And
right.
then like this system is all that he knows. So come to find out, not only did he fool you personally, but he betrayed your entire species. He killed all your leaders, including the one that you like model your life after,
Hmm.
um, and aspire to the most. And then he took all of their transformation cogs, you know, being the big twist of the movie. Um, I guess at least one of them. But
Yeah,
yeah, just the stealing of the transformation cogs. Like when I started to think more about that, I was like, he basically stripped every single one of them of any agency they could have possibly had. And given how long they're supposed to live for, we could imagine this has been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So,
it actually does say in the movie that it's been 50 cycles since the primes, since the matrix of leadership disappeared,
right.
which is still a long time. It's that's 50 years. But again, yeah, to reiterate what you said, before D16 and all the other miners came online, they had their transformation cogs removed, and they were led to believe that this is their life, and they have to their job as the miners is their duty to help keep Cybertron secure and flourishing by digging deep into the core to recover all this energon. But it was just a ploy for Sentinel to pay off the Quintessons and to rule Cybertron for his own gain. Um,
Yeah, the Quintessons also, um, just as a short side note, really cool design in this movie. Much better than like the old school like four-faced rotating design from like the G1
yeah,
cartoons and stuff. I thought they
and
looked
they're
really cool.
I do like them being a race of like biomechanical things instead of being like, oh, they're evil giant head robots that made the Transformers. This one, you know, I like how they're just this alien race that's always have been in conflict with Cybertron for its, most of its existence. Really good. Again, this movie has a lot of nice takes on old school ideas.
Hmm. Yeah, so I feel like bringing the Quintessons in it, and even though they don't play like a huge role in the movie, you know, you really feel like how much of a threat they are when you see the giant ships and then they take all of the energon and they're like, "Nah, we need more."
We need more. Even though they don't verbally communicate that, you know that with the how Sentinel reacts to them being mad about the great amount they got, that they need to get more. You know they're a threat enough, which it's always nice to show a visual threat rather than say, I am evil as hell and you owe me this.
Hmm.
It's much more impactful for like your main villain to be shitting there in their own pants with a bigger threat.
Right. Right. And that is a possible setup for like future stories as well. Um, but you have that larger threat looming over the more personal threat, which is obviously Sentinel Prime, conspiring with them and selling off all the energon that they worked for, which is just another reason for D16 to fucking go as crazy as he does, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like I was mentioning, um, if I was that guy, I would go insane because I feel like it is very reasonable to want to, you know, kill him for what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. The path of logic for D16's descent, as most how would view it, is completely reasonable. You're born, you think you're supposed to be, this job you have is all you're ever going to have, and then you realize that he sold out your entire race. He's selling off your life resource, and you're just working as a essential slave with no choice in it.
Yeah, and he fooled you, and he was like up in your face, not but maybe an hour ago, talking about congratulations on participating in the race and stuff. I'm gonna take you to my private quarters. If I was him too, and he like shook my hand, I would also feel the same kind of
Yeah.
way. And that's not even to mention, um, his justifiable anger at Orion Pax, who always seems to drag him into dangerous situations, not really giving him any choice in the matter.
Yeah. And it makes perfect sense. Whenever they find out the truth, he's like, dude, I could have just lived my life not knowing this, but now I do. And it's essentially Orion's fault that they found out this, for better or worse. Again, going back on the things that Orion does things and gets people hurt, either physically or mentally in this case.
Yeah, and him just like not being he didn't have any agency from birth because his transformation cog got stolen, and then he also feels like he doesn't have any agency as his own person because Orion Pax is always dragging him into, whatever
Hmm.
he wants to do, and he always has to cover for him and stuff. So once he finally gets the transformation cog and he gets his own agency, he seizes that opportunity.
Yeah. And you see the change. What I like about this is that, but once they get their transformation cogs, they visually change, but their personalities do. Orion slowly realizes, he becomes more of a why he wisens up. He becomes more of a leader, and D16 evolves, or I guess you could say devolves into what essentially is closer steps to becoming Megatron.
It really starts at the point in which he gets the transformation cog, because you start to notice the differences between their characters after the point they get them. Because Alpha Trion even says that like the difference isn't the transformation cog, it's the spark in your core, right?
Hmm.
So the cog gave them the ability to create change, but whether they wanted to or not, like they were both gonna go on their separate ways because that's just who they are. So after they learn how to transform, you see D16 just totally kills that guy and is like happy as shit about it. Like
Yeah, he
he's
revels in it,
loving it, dude. And Orion Pax
and
sees that and he's like, "Hey man, like you should probably chill out." But D16's just happy about it because for the first time in his life, he has the power to like change things. And he doesn't have to get pushed around.
yeah, and after that, you immediately start to see the deterioration of their friendship when he takes the map and he, tells Orion that he has it. And he doesn't say it like, oh, I got it. He tells him in a very aggressive manner that he has it. And he becomes super focused on taking down Sentinel. And then they come across the, in this case, the High Guard, which are typically the Seekers, which are usually, were the High Guard in this movie were like the the elite force of the Primes, and they could all fly.
Hmm.
And in this case, the leader of the High Guard is Starscream,
Yeah, so that
and
that was a really interesting decision, I think, to make like a lot of those other characters a part of this high guard that ends up following Megatron because he just kind of pulls up in there, and just swags on everybody, and they're like, "Damn,
yeah,
let's follow
they're
that
like, oh,
guy."
yeah, and Starscream's whole motto is the strength of one bot over another. And while they have the ability to fly, D16, being a land vehicle, was able to overpower Starscream,
Hmm.
and he almost kills him. And
Yeah, a
when
guy
you
who
really
learned how to transform like two
storm,
seconds ago.
and you really start to see D16 transform when he chokes the shit out of Starscream.
Hmm.
And again, this is a children's movie. Like, he's choking the hell out of him,
I
and
mean, God,
he's
dude. Before that, there's that part where Optimus is the truck, and he transforms that guy in half. Like he rips that dude in half while transforming.
yeah, the violence in this movie is crazy for a kids movie. It's like, damn.
Yeah, 'cause they're robots and stuff, it feels like they could get away with a lot more. But at some point, I mean, they make it a point that D16 is the first one to actually kill somebody. But man, they kill a lot of motherfuckers in this movie, dude.
Yeah, but again, like, just the idea of like D16 just putting his hands around, Starscream's voice or his throat, and he starts to clench it so hard that he breaks his voice box, and that's how you get Starscream to have his, weird, high pitched, graspy,
I
talky voice.
so how do you feel about that? Because I really liked Steve Buscemi's like regular voice when we first saw the character. I was like, oh wow, he's like, he sounds a little bit more respectable. But then they kind of, then they kind of walked it back.
I
I get the idea of it, right? There's a lot of neat little references in this movie, um, to like old Transformers stuff, and I get what they were going for with Starscream's voice, but I feel like Steve Buscemi could play a way more interesting character,
y-
if they expand upon it and he has his
yeah
actual voice, because if that could
yeah.
not work throughout a whole movie, right?
n- the thing was, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I like this. This seems like a Starscream. Like, he's hiding and stuff. He's being cowardly and he's full of himself, and he gets put in this place by D16 before he became Megatron. So it makes sense. And then you have him this weird fucked up voice, and it's just a little too distracting.
Yeah, it got that's how I feel too. It got kind of distracting, but they make it a point to make him not talk that much afterwards, which I feel like is a missed opportunity. 'Cause Starscream, the more I think about it, I feel like is probably my favorite character, like in Transformers in general. I think he's very interesting.
There's a lot of good iterations of Starscream in a lot of different shows.
I've seen some clips from like Transformers Prime, where he looks very very interesting, a lot different,
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite iterations of Starscream. And then the other one was the
where he's kind
3D
of
show.
depressed all the time.
Yeah. But
Um,
going back to this,
yeah.
yeah, just and it's after that point, when the High Guard is celebrating D16 being their essentially their new leader, Orion Pax kind of has a moment of realization that his friend is going on a completely different path than he is. And it's very subtle, but D16 looks over towards Orion, intentionally or not, and his eye color starts to change. His eyes in the beginning of the movie is yellow, then it turns to orange. In that moment, it shifts between orange and red, which I like
Right, before the
because it
ending, when he becomes Megatron, where they just turn red completely. Yeah, I read this interview where they were talking about how they really wanted to make sure that the eyes were very expressive in this movie, and I feel like that was a great touch because even though they're like CGI cartoon robots, you could really feel a lot of the emotion just in the eyes.
visually, yeah, you really like. Not only could you like, visually you could see it, their faces without saying anything. I could completely read how everyone was feeling it in that moment. But the vocal performances for Orion Pax and D16 were fucking phenomenal. I can't give enough praises to their vocal
Yeah,
performances
I
in this
believe I
movie.
believe D16's actor is Brian Tyree Henry, and like I mentioned, Ryan Pax was Chris Hemsworth. They both did a phenomenal job. I really liked uh, D16's evolution too, as he gets the cog and then transforms throughout the movie. His voice changes too, where
It's
he starts off very friendly, and then it was crazy to hear over like the pretty short course of this movie to hear the voice turn into something so threatening.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I think we should keep talking about the movie, recapping and give our thoughts about that because I want to get into the fall. That
Right.
is
So
the peak of that movie.
yeah, at that point that Chandler was referring to, um, Megatron has won the respect of the High Guard. They share that little look for maybe a half second, but before you know it, what's her name? Arachnid?
They call her Arachnid in this movie.
Yeah, I don't. I thought that was kind of a weird choice for a character in this movie because I had never even seen this character before. I think she's in Transformers Prime as well, but
It's
regardless,
supposed to be Arachnia, but then they call her Arachnid, and freaking Alita One calls her Arachnid. So
yeah,
it's very weird.
yeah, not super important. I just thought that was a interesting choice. I guess it was more of just a design thing, right? Just obvious like villain henchman type design.
Yeah, the big goon.
So yeah, she like busts in with a bunch of Zeta Prime's goons. Um, before moving on, I did want to mention Alpha Trion. That point in which they get the transformation cogs and they meet Alpha Trion. Um, Man, that's a great character too. I really liked his like mentorship with Orion Pax, even if it was only for a couple seconds.
Yeah,
Orion Pax
absolutely.
being the only one who tries to stop and go back for him when he has to fight everybody and gets kidnapped.
And also have him as a weird mythical jaguar horned dinosaurian creature,
It made me
super
want to
nice.
see the other Primes transformations too, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
cool.
Like, what were they capable of? What could they have done? I mean, you see a flashback of Megatronus leaning down and shooting air rocket missiles at the
But
Quintessons.
what did they even like turn into? And like
Yeah,
you see that picture of them all standing together, and then they fight for a little bit, but you only really get to see Alpha Trion transform. I really would have liked to see the other ones, but it leaves a little bit of room to the imagination where you can think of some cool stuff. Like how
right.
would they have looked in this universe?
And mind you, all the 13 primes in that movie had really standout designs. There was like one that had like multiple legs, so it's like, oh, what could
There's
he
that
turn
really
into?
short guy, I think who had like a staff.
Yeah,
Really
those,
cool, really unique designs, definitely.
and you had Zeta Prime again. Could he turn into? Because typically in the other shows and not even shows, the games, he turns into a car.
Hmm.
So it would have been nice to see. It would have been nice to get a little bit more with the primes, but they're these mythical heroes, godlike characters. So I get why we only saw them in the flashback and only seen the surviving one in action. Because
Yeah,
living legends, these legends are not living legends, so they're in the past. So I get why.
yeah. It's the movie is past their time, right? We take place after the events of what happened, where Sentinel Prime betrays them and ends up taking out all of the primes. I also wanted to say I like the detail of making Megatronus not like evil, like they do in some of the other continuities, where
Yeah.
he was like a figurehead for a revolution that like kind of went bad. In this one, he was just like the strongest and toughest one. Um, which is more simple, but I don't think is necessarily bad. I like it more when he's not directly evil. Um, and also like in some of the other continuities, he like is a scholar of Decepticonism, and there's like an idea behind it. Whereas in this game, or movie rather, this movie it takes place more naturally, uh,
Mm-hmm.
where everybody
Where
follows D16, and it all comes from the fact that he gets that sticker at the beginning of the movie.
and it's his face. Megatron or the symbols of the Decepticons is based off of Megatronus, and that's such a cool concept because in the Bayverse movies, the Revenge of the Fallen,
Hmm.
his face is supposed to be the symbol of Decepticons, but he can't really tell. It's so hard to tell with all that junk in his face.
They
But
had
this
a
one,
different design for it initially, from what I heard, but they ended up going with the one that's in the movie, obviously, which doesn't really make sense to me because it doesn't look like it at all. But
yeah, and this one's an easier translation. They look up to him. They use his face for their symbolism.
hmm.
Makes sense. It's a nice translation because all the other continuities, he's like a ghost specter that turns into a freaking oven, like a furnace. It's really weird, and he's like a ghost.
Yeah, and
So
then
it's
in the
just
Michael Bay movies, he doesn't even transform. They had to
he
make
just
up some shit
teleports.
for him when they released his toy.
Yeah.
Um, Going back to the movie again. So after the attack with the Arachnid, Alpha Trion had gave them some proof with this like weird hologram recording thing of Sentinel Prime's betrayal, which ends up getting destroyed in the battle with Arachnid and some of Sentinel Prime's minions. Bumblebee and D16 get kidnapped. They get taken to Sentinel Prime's little lair, I guess. While
His penthouse.
Yeah, while Orion Pax and Elita One rally the High Guard to try and hijack a train and get back to Iacon City. So you have this separation in the story, right, where D16 and Bumblebee are captured, and Orion Pax and Elita One are on the way to Iacon, and then Orion Pax has to try and recruit the miners to help them out. The miners who will eventually become the Autobots. You see Jazz, Ironhide, a lot of different characters in there.
Yeah.
Um, and I really like uh, the difference between how Orion Pax recruits the miners versus how D16 recruited the High Guard. Because Orion Pax I don't know if you noticed this in the movie. He gets down on one knee and talks to them on their level. Eh,
Absolutely. That's one thing I noticed. He gets on their level and he speaks to them and he's giving them the choice to rise up against the injustice they have been going through, and that, they could, keep working and work themselves to death, or they could, take this chance and fight for their right to have a freedom and a choice. And I found that very, very endearing in
mhm.
that part.
Yeah, yeah. It was very it was kind of moving in a way, which I feel like is core to the point of Optimus Prime's character. There's an old quote, I think it was from a comic or a TV show, I can't remember which, where Ironhide has talked about Optimus, and I think he says something to the effect of the way he spoke made you feel as powerful as he was. And it felt
Hmm.
like that really came across when he was talking to them. So he ends up recruiting them, um, and they end up assaulting Sentinel's penthouse, his Trump Tower.
Hmm.
But not before we get the scene with D16 trying to stand up to him. And this I also had to pay attention to more because I really like this part. At all other point, everybody else is on their knees about to get executed, basically, and he's like the only one that stands up. So Sentinel tries to make a example of him. He roughs him up a little bit, and he stands back up again, and then he kicks him over, and he straight up tells him, he's like, he sees the Megatronus sticker and he goes, "Oh man, yeah, of course you were a fan. He was the biggest and toughest, and that's why when I killed him, I took his cog for myself." And you see the motherfucker opens up his chest and has the deep purple promethazine transformation cog.
Transformation cog.
Which some people were saying the reason that it's purple like that is because it's corrupted with dark energon. I don't think they make reference to that in the movie, but it is interesting that
No,
it is visually different,
it is because all the other cogs are blue and stuff.
and his is purple.
I I feel like it's corrupted, but it's not because of dark energon. Again, I feel like it's because the spark of their of the decisions they make. While Sentinel Prime presents himself as this pillar of leadership and righteousness, and as a Prime, deep inside he's a piece of shit.
Hmm.
And he's fucking terrible. He enslaved his own people to work for the Quintessons and mutilate them before they came
And it
up.
was because his plan was totally stupid. He never thought about the fact that the Matrix was like not something that you could just pick up and use, and he totally drained the entire planet of energon.
Yeah. Oh, this is dumbass fault. Yeah.
Yeah, it was man. So yeah, I think Sentinel Prime's a really fun villain though, honestly. I
Yeah,
like the
John
sort
Hamm.
of, yeah, his performance was great, and I like his role in the movie as like a like not a traditional like Decepticon or Autobot or anything like that, but he was just looking out for himself. He was like, whatever, I'll just do it because I can.
Yeah.
So he stands up to him though, right? And then at that point he kicks him over and he takes the Megatronus decal and uses it to like burn the Decepticon logo into his chest. And then after that he stands up again. And it's like I would totally be a Decepticon because if I was in that room and I saw him standing up like that, I'd be like, "No, I'm going to follow that guy." That's
Yeah.
badass, dude.
No, yeah. Again, you had these two. Yeah, earlier, D16, recruits the High Guard under, as his little minions and things. But that was a real stand up moment where again, it was moving. Maybe not for the right reasons, but again, like you said, if I was in that room and I saw this bot get his shit beat in, get beat up again, get branded, and then stand up again, I'm like, I'm with that guy.
Exactly. So
I'm on the same boat with you, dude.
I
Fuck Sin.
I wish we could have seen some more of the miners react more to D16 so you could see more of the schism forming between who the people are going to follow.
I
Because he
think,
is inspiring in his own way even if it's not like um it's it's not in a positive way like Optimus is.
yeah,
He's more of just like, man, that dude's badass.
I, I think it was intentional that they didn't have any of the miners react to that because, I mean, hate to get back in the G1 thing, but originally the only Cybertronians who could fly were Decepticons, and the
Right.
High Guards are the only one who could fly. And them being in the same room, only the High Guard being in that room with them, gave them, the recognition that, oh my God, we need to follow D16. This guy's all about it.
He is
I'm
about
with
it.
him.
He's him, dude.
Yeah, he is him. And then you had, he went through the brutal shit, to show he is worthy enough to be a leader. And you had Orion Pax go on the level of the miners, giving them his choice, and they went with him because, again, they were never given a choice before, and they decided to take it. And I feel like, yeah, with the High Guard, they were given a choice to follow D16, but being shown strength in a physical way is their whole motto, their whole ideology. It fits in better with that.
Hmm. You can
So if
you
they
can
did a
see
part
how
two,
they like. Sorry to cut you off for a sec.
no, you're good.
That you can just see the difference in how they approach and how they get different people to follow them. And I just thought that was a really interesting touch to how you could see subtleties in how the factions were going to form in the future.
Hmm.
But what were you saying about the part two?
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe if they made a part two, you could see, different schisms. Maybe some of the higher, like, yeah, Megatron, it's kind of fucking crazy. He's blowing up the planet and shit. I might side with the Autobots because there are some Autobots that fly, and Jetfire, I think apparently originally was a Decepticon, and then he
Yeah.
sided with the Autobots,
Yeah, his old story
and
was
then
that he was a turncoat.
whereas you could have some of the miners be like, fucking Optimus Prime fucking sucks, dude. Pacifism and shit. That's some bullshit, dude. Fucking, I'm gonna hang out with Decepticons, and then that's how you get some of the Decepticons that can, turn into land vehicles, work with the Decepticons. Because right now it's just all the High Guard, and they all fly, minus Megatron. So there's different avenues they can explore,
I would
but
really like to see them explore this movie in a sequel. Um, hopefully
yes,
maybe
please,
we could that would be
Paramount, please,
that would be
Paramount,
cool.
please.
Um,
Um,
yeah, getting back to the back to the movie again.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, they get to the point where they assault Sentinel's penthouse. Sentinel's fighting them. They end up using Arachnid's head, uh, because she like records everything or something like that to expose Sentinel to the whole city. At which point the central conflict happens. D16 like tackles him out a window. They fly down to the ground where they all eventually meet up, and D16 is about to kill this motherfucker Sentinel, right?
yeah.
He's about to blast him in the face. Orion Pax tries to talk to him, tries to get him to stop, but he chooses his words poorly. He says, "Don't be like Sentinel." And
Yeah.
D16 hears that shit, and he's like, "You need to get out the way right now." And he's like, "Well, damn." So he goes to blast him, and then Orion Pax jumps in the way, right? He eats the shot to the chest. He flies away. He's about to fly off a cliff before D16 grabs his hand, and then we get to that moment, right? The moment where he's holding him above the pit, and Orion is pleading with him, not to start Cybertron's revolution with a murder of a prime. And he says, "You know what? I'm done saving you." And then he
And he
drops
lets
him.
his ass go. So one interesting thing I didn't know about this, but apparently according to the director of the movie, when after D16 blows a hole in Orion and he's holding up and he's asking, he's like, no, why did you do that? He's not talking to Orion. He's talking to himself. He's asking himself
Oh,
why yeah,
oh,
completely changes that. You're like, oh, okay, yeah. He's asking why Orion was dumb enough to jump in front of Sentinel. No, he's asking himself why he shot his friend.
right.
So completely changes how I view that scene. And I really, really loved D16 holding Orion over this hole, and he starts to rationalize all the bullshit that Orion has put him through, and he makes up his mind and decides to drop his best friend
Hmm.
because he's done saving him. All the mishaps and all the bullshit that has happened to D16 was because of
Yeah,
Orion.
throughout this entire movie,
Yeah,
um, has
and
all
more.
indirectly, in one way or another, been Orion's fault.
Yeah, and the only way he could, you know, have his agency is by letting Orion go. if Orion's there, he's he won't have his own free will
Because
because
he'll keep dragging him back by doing stuff, you know, by taking his agency away, and he basically swore to himself once he got the transformation cog that that shit wasn't gonna happen no more.
hmm
And I really like, you know, you see that just those couple seconds of him like looking away from Orion and just thinking about it before ultimately making his decision. At which point you get the back and forth scenes between D16 officially becoming Megatron and Orion Pax becoming Optimus Prime.
right. Again, you see the visual descent of Orion Pax falling to the core of Cybertron, and then you
In
see
a very beautifully animated sequence,
yeah,
if I must say.
okay, so Brian
Incredible
Tyler.
music, incredible like voice work on the guy voicing Primus. Just a
It was
super awesome
actually
scene.
Alpha
Alpha
Trion.
Trion, right? My bad.
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne did a phenomenal job.
Right.
Hype up, hyping up Orion Pax, and I do love the descent. Again, the visual descent of Orion going to the core, and then you see D16's literal, or his
More
you
mental
know
descent. Take
mental descent
ripping Sentinel in half in front
in
of
front of a
everybody,
crowd.
which is awesome. Very
Again,
crazy visual, especially for a children's movie.
again, it's a child's movie, and he's ripping essentially the president of the world in front of all of his coworkers, and the audience.
Yeah, so he rips him in half, and then you know takes the Megatronus core out, takes it for himself, and then decides to rebrand himself as Megatron. And I like the visual changes to him as well, where you see the fusion cannon like transforms. He gets a little bit taller. Um,
Yeah,
and at this point, you know, he starts acting like more of the Megatron that we know, where he just starts blasting.
yeah, he
Uh,
starts blasting people,
yeah, it's clear
and
at this point that his hatred for Sentinel is going too far because the man is dead now. The man is in two pieces on the floor, and he's like, "No, it's not enough. We gotta keep blasting."
the first thing he blasts is a statue of Sentinel,
Hmm.
and he says to burn it down, all of it. And when Alita pleads him to stop it, he says it's over until all of his followers are dead, and he's going to kill Alita. He's going to kill Alita and Bumblebee because fuck him. You know,
Yeah, I
there's
don't care
no
about
course
y'all.
of change.
Whatever.
Yeah, there's no possible chance of a future without any of the followers
Like
left.
you're in my
So
way,
you
you
have to
gotta
die.
go too. Sorry. So you can just see the at least upon a rewatch for me at least, you could definitely see the path that led him to go down. Um, how it went, right? Because it kind of mirrors what might happen in real life, you know, like a dude who's like, let's just say hypothetically, right, like a dude who's tired of his job or whatever, you know, decides to go crazy, you know.
hmm
I feel like it was just a very believable story, and a believable portrayal of the character, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Because a lot of time Megatron is just evil as fuck for no reason because he wants to be in charge.
Just because he's
And
kind of crazy, you know, but like it was easier to see how he came to those rationalizations, no matter how extreme they might be, when you think about all the stuff that happened to him throughout the course of the movie. I mean, his entire life, dude, was just a complete lie. He was a slave for like 50 years at least.
yeah, at the maximum, 50 years. But we get this awesome, ascension of Orion Pax transform or being revived essentially, and being joined with the matrix of leadership at the core of Cybertron. And again, you see him visually change from his upgraded form with the T cog to an Optimus Prime.
Hmm. At which point, Chris Hemsworth's voice also changes as well,
Yeah,
and you get more of, like I said, that Peter Cullen
is a
type sound to his voice with a much deeper, much more
gruffly
like,
voice.
yeah, much more like selective with his words type thing too. Like the first thing he says when he comes back is he said, "We were given the power to change our world, and you chose to destroy it." And at that point, you know that's when the real rivalry starts. You know, it's like we're not friends anymore. Like you got to go now.
Yeah,
And
at the end.
even after beating all of their asses, like he takes on like tons of the high guard too, and just swags on all of them. And he can't bring himself to kill him still, so he says you are banished from Iacon, which at
And
this point just creates another problem.
yeah, doesn't kill him, just exiles him. But I do like how he reacts. Like when he exiles him, Optimus at this point can't even look Megatron in the eyes when he says it.
Yeah, he looks down at the ground and he says this isn't over, and then he walks away.
Yeah,
He
it walks
transforms and
off
dries off.
and swags off, and his entire high guard follows behind him, flying away up to the surface. And again, you just see such a sadness in Optimus's face, realizing that the line has been crossed and there's just no going back. That some friendships transform and they're permanent.
Yeah, because
And
he hit that point, where I mean he tore that man in half, Like D16
public
made the choice to drop him and then to tear Sentinel in half
it's
right
a
afterwards.
public execution, and then terrorism, domestic terrorism.
Yeah, for no real reason afterwards, like. And then after he gets the Matrix, the Energon returns too. So now D16 just kind of looks like an asshole to everybody. But like
And
I said, I can see how some of the bots would be more drawn to his cause, especially if you were in the room with him when he was standing up.
yeah, I definitely did like Megatron's reaction to Optimus Prime, where Primus chose him and gave him the Matrix. Like at first he's like stunned and he just can't believe it. Then he completely disregards it
And he's
because
like, you know what? That should have been
fuck
me.
you.
No, you don't. No, you don't get the Matrix. No, you
Yeah,
gotta die too. You don't get to be a
you gotta
Prime.
die.
I'm not dealing with Primes anymore.
Yeah.
He's like, I already killed you once. I'll do it again.
And another reaction I liked was seeing an Energon blade being formed by Orion Pax. Everyone is just completely stunned because they haven't seen anything like that before, and no one knows how to deal with
Yeah,
it.
and it's a kind of a weird like. I mean, Bumblebee has the knife hands, right? But it was a weird thing where like the Matrix was kind of like fighting for him, like he wasn't even
Yeah,
aware of what his body was doing at first, because his hand like transforms into like that big shock wave before he gets the axe. And I really liked how he was like tossing it and throwing out like energy blades and stuff. It was really cool. The action in this
there
movie was also animated very well.
there was one scene that I didn't catch at first, but a couple of rewatches on YouTube is whenever he slices the fusion cannon in half.
Hmm.
At first, it starts on his right hand, then it de-transforms, and as he's turning around, you could see the energon being passed through his chest to
Oh,
his left
shit.
arm, and then it cuts it in half. Again,
That's
the
so
attention
tight.
of
That's so
yeah,
tight.
the attention of detail in this movie is immaculate. This
Insane,
had
bro. That's so
super
cool.
artistic merit. Like whenever D16 drops uh Orion, like he's looking down and the sky starts to darken up behind him. Again, just like cool little fucking details, and I'm like, damn, these motherfuckers really gave a fuck about this movie. They actually, had passion behind it. There's so much, and it's hard to see that in IP like Transformers, where it's just slop, robots fighting. There's so much care into it, so many little details that you could miss. That rewatch is like, oh my god, this is so fucking cool. Again, like that, like
Yeah,
the
man.
energon passing through is a fucking dope ass like
It is
visual
fucking
concept.
dope, dude. Just like yeah, like you were saying, man, the amount of care put into this movie and like some of the other like Transformers uh pieces of media, like you mentioned, the War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron games were also just fantastic. Like, for an IP, like a franchise that's whole point was based on selling toys, it really did evolve as time went on. And these characters mean stuff to people now.
Hmm.
And it was really cool after seeing so many, like Michael Bay movies that were just made for the purpose of generating money that didn't really care too much
Mean
about the
anything.
source material, They were just products, really. You get a movie like this where they take the time to examine the characters, and just because it's a kids movie doesn't mean it has to be, like you said, slop.
Exactly.
It's
Which
just a great movie though, man. Like after that point in which they fight, the movie pretty much peters out. Optimus gives a little speech about the quintessons and stuff, so more room open for a future installment of the series, which would be really fucking cool.
Really, really fucking cool. Would love to see that.
Everybody
And
should
you
go
get a
watch
little
this
cool end
movie.
credit scenes. Go watch the movie. The end credits was awesome because on the top of on the surface, Cybertron's like hell. It's a hellscape now,
Yep.
and the Decepticons start branding themselves with the face of Megatronus's Prime's actual face,
Hmm.
and Megatron gives a little speech that Sentinel's dead, but there's a new enemy, a stronger enemy, a personal enemy, and that even though they've been deceived, they won't be deceived, so they're going to call themselves the Decepticons.
Yeah,
And
I always found it interesting how they kind of turned the name on his head because like Decepticons is obviously like a very evil name, but it was like it's like an ironic thing. I remember reading a thing about Autobots was like a weird slur that they had basically.
what the hell?
It was like, yeah, you guys are Autobots because like uh you just do the same thing or whatever, like you're autonomous.
Yeah, and again, that's a nice way they have to give the Autobots their name,
And they
the
own
Optimus
that
Prime.
name. They were like, nah, that actually goes hard.
This one, they call themselves the Autobots because they have autonomy
Hmm.
over themselves. And I did like uh, Chris Hemsworth Optimus Prime speech at the end. It was again very motivational, very touching. That you know they're given the power to transform, and now they every individual and every sentient, not just all of the Cybertronians, but every sentient being has the freedom and right of autonomy, which is very very fucking cool. You know, again, I'm just flustered. Thinking about that goddamn speech. That shit was so fucking tight.
I mean, when every time Optimus Prime makes a speech, it just gets me emotional too, honestly,
Yeah,
because it's just fucking awesome. And like I said, I wasn't expecting his performance to be as solid as it was, really, but he did a really good job. I got to give it to him. You know, I would be interested in seeing him continue to voice this character in a sequel. Um,
yeah, and
but yeah, just a great movie all around. I wanted to mention I really liked the art style. I really liked they really nailed like the mix of like weird mysticism and technology that makes up Transformers, like the way that
hmm
Alpha Trion was like using like magic and like sand to create like illusions
yeah,
to tell stories and stuff.
yeah. But speaking about designs, if you look at this movie visually, you could tell it was very inspired by G1, but it wasn't an exact one to one. And I do appreciate when they're able to modernize the G1 style because it's very blocky. It was in the 80s.
Yeah, the
It was
designs were pretty simple.
they're
Um,
pretty simple.
but you get to see them like, kind of remix them in this movie in a way that's like modern and cool but still very reminiscent of the source material.
Yeah, it's a very retro feeling, but again, it's been updated to be within the modern style.
All right. Well, I guess moving
Think,
on from that, uh I wanted to move into the next section of the podcast, I think, which I was pretty excited for. So, apart from looking at you know, different media every episode, um like I said, we want to try and tackle different topics. I thought an interesting idea would be a new section in which we introduce some recommendations to each other
yeah,
about some media that
absolutely.
we may not have seen before, some maybe lesser known stuff. Obviously, Transformers 1 was a fantastic movie, and I highly recommend everybody go see it in whichever way you can. I think I bought it on Amazon. You can buy it through YouTube. Um, just please go support that movie if you are listening to this podcast, so
Yeah,
that we can continue to get good movies in the future. Um,
absolutely. I agree with that sentiment.
yeah. But I think going into the recommendations, I think I want to hear from you first. So
All right,
go ahead.
I'm going to start with my mixed bag. So, this is not exactly a media thing, but I want to ask you about food.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, about food, huh? Wow.
Yeah, so I got a little recipe for you. How do you feel about pork chops?
Huh, pork chops. I don't know. I feel like I've had those occasionally. Um, but not really. It's not really something I think I've ever like been keen on like ordering if I go out anywhere. And I don't think I really had anybody at home that made anything like that. So
All right, well, this is a pretty simple recipe anyone could follow through. Um, Generally, when I had pork chops, they're very dry. They're not tasty at all. Yeah. But with this, I found out through a friend, pork chops are super inexpensive. You can get like a pack of like six for like $3 to $4 at your local store. Um, so you want to get the bone-ins because this is very important. The bone-in allows the meat to be juicy. So you get your pork chops and you're going to go ahead and reverse sear it. Have you reverse sear anything?
no, I don't think I have.
Okay, so all you need is or you need a baking sheet and a rack of some sort
Like in the oven?
in the oven. Yeah. Um, you're going to go ahead and you're going to season up. So the recommendations I have for seasoning are seasoned salt. I just find it to be a lot tastier than regular salt. Grounded black pepper and garlic powder. You put it on both sides.
Okay.
You put one half. So you heat the oven at 250. You go ahead and put one side. You cook it on one side for about 15 to 20 minutes. You flip it on the other side, cook it for another 15 to 20 minutes. You pull it out, and then you sear it on the pan until it's like a golden color.
Okay.
And for the side dish, this is gonna be a weird one, but you gotta hear me out.
Okay. I'm listening.
Potatoes and applesauce. Not applesauce, but like an apple butter compound of sorts. Pork works super excellent with apple for whatever reason. Or, hear me out. I'm putting my hands up as I say this behind the camera
Okay.
or behind the screen.
All right.
You could dip the potato into the apples and it tastes good.
Hmm.
It's a little out there, but I found it to be very enjoyable, and I think more people should try this.
Hmm. Well, okay.
So that was my first recommendation.
Well,
The
you got
second
you got
recommendation.
multiple, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The
Okay,
second
so I'm assuming
recommendation.
the next one is more media oriented then.
Yeah. No. I wanted to get the weird one that was like, not exactly media, but like a recommendation. I was like, I think you should try this. It's very easy to make.
Okay.
So, do you like Dark Souls?
I do like Dark Souls.
Do you like World War II aesthetics?
Yeah, I might have a soft spot for World War II aesthetics on occasion.
Do you like Warhammer?
I do like Warhammer.
Have you heard of the tabletop called Trench Crusade?
No, I have not heard of that.
So, Trench Crusade essentially puts in all those aspects into one. And this is a tabletop game. And it's very inexpensive to get into because the whole idea it's a skirmish game. And at most you have like 25 models on the table. But in this timeline, way back in the Crusades, the Templars came across a portal to hell and opened it up and unleashed hell to the world. And now the world has been fighting between the forces of God and the forces of, hell.
Hmm.
And there's different factions. There's a Templar faction, of course, and they have these giant freaking pontifex, church walker with like a mace and like a cross, and you have a court of the seven head serpents, which is tied to Lucifer himself. But the art style is so striking and so ethereal. I wish I could pop up something real quick to show you what it looks like. But it's a very striking media because I know we've been getting to Warhammer lately and
What is the name of
War
the tabletop game again?
Trench Crusade.
Let me take a look at this.
Yeah, go ahead, take a peep, would you?
So it's a tabletop game.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Yeah, I'm getting Warhammer vibes for sure.
Yeah, but if you look at like the demonic stuff, it's like super Dark Soulsy.
Yeah, they are very cool looking. Very
Yeah.
I'm looking at this one right now. It's like this It's called Warhead, I think. I don't know. It's like this giant rat monster, and it's got a bunch of metal strapped to it. It's got like big spiky fingers. Looks pretty crazy.
Uh, rat. What was it called?
Uh,
That
Warhead.
one thing.
I don't know. That might be from something different, honestly. But this is like the first thing that comes up when I look at Trench Crusade. So
Yeah, you have the pilgrim. Oh yeah. That thing. That's one of those things. I don't know every unit. I just know the models and what they look. But the beauty of this is that because it's so new, is that the developers of it are like, hey, you could just make your own anti faction and use it,
that is pretty cool.
which is pretty cool.
It's a
They're
cool
like, yeah,
idea. That allows for some creative
creative.
new
Yeah, and they're
ideas.
coming
Yeah.
out with new factions and stuff like that. So they have like your regular um trench faction. They have like Ottoman Empire one. They have pilgrims, and they have like a Beelzebub faction for the evil guys, and they have the Lucifer faction. So it's a brand. It's I don't know how new it is. I want to say it's less than a year, but they have some people from I believe from Warhammer working on this game.
Well, okay. Um,
Yeah, and my last recommendation that I want to get out there is a horror analog series called Man in the Suit.
so
And
I am familiar with Man in the Suit for one thing.
really,
Yes,
okay,
the Godzilla one.
the Godzilla one. Yep, that's what I was going to get
Yeah,
into.
that's a very interesting analog horror series about a guy playing Godzilla in the Godzilla movies, where he starts to like merge with the suit. Very cool, very interesting analog horror. Uh, please go check that out if you haven't seen it already.
Yeah, very abstract and very and it's very nice because like he isn't like I'm evil as fuck and I'm gonna just kill people as Godzilla. He has a motivation for it, and it makes so much sense because of the origin of the first Godzilla movie.
Uh, yeah, yeah, I watched it a couple times. Watched a couple of those breakdown videos and stuff too. Like I said, very interesting series. Watched that one a couple times.
All right,
All right, I guess
so
we can move on to my side of it then.
yeah,
I didn't know you
as
were gonna come at me with multiple, so I only picked one, but I guess I could throw another one in there at this point. Um, so you mentioned analog horror there at the end.
mm-hmm.
What what other kind of analog horrors have you watched?
Um, there's been a couple of ones. I think
Any
I
notable
have the
ones?
unfortunate mistake of like the last series that I watched in depth. I was really late at night and I was really drunk. Was like the Jurassic Park 3D ones, and some of those were hit and miss. I was like, "Yo, this is scary as fuck. If I got into a plane crash, that would be me freaking out like that." And I watched it back and I was like, "Dude, this is fucking
This was
ass."
not as scary as I thought it was. I was
I was
just
like,
messed
"No,
up.
this is not scary as hell." I was like, "Bro, what the fuck was I thinking?" But there's been a lot. I mean, there's a YouTube channel dedicated to breaking down analog creepy pastas.
Yeah, so
Um,
analog horror is pretty I mean, I think it came out like a couple years ago. Some pretty famous ones out there. There's like the Mandela Catalog,
mhm.
Local 58, Gemini Home Entertainment. Those are a couple of my favorites personally. But I wanted to mention something to you. Have you heard of any? I guess I'll throw two of them at you. Um, one of them's a little more abstract. The other one I feel like is pretty popular, but maybe you haven't seen it. You ever heard of a series called Vita Carnis?
Yes, yes. I'm gonna say this. We've talked about it a while back ago.
Oh, we did,
Vita
didn't we?
Carnis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did
we
you
did.
watched it?
I haven't seen the complete series, but I was up to the part where I think the big point was the book about
Mm,
the prince from the stars or whatever.
yeah. Okay.
So I haven't caught up of lately. I don't know if they added more to it.
Yeah, there might be more that has been uploaded since then. But if you've already seen that one, how do you feel about the idea of dinosaur analog horror?
I like dinosaur analog. I mean, I'm gonna hate to break it to everyone here, but I fucking love dinosaurs. So if you can make dinosaurs terrifying, I've had a couple of nightmares about dinosaurs, and it's made me paranoid. Sometimes even though these motherfuckers don't exist, but a lot of the most popular ones that I've seen is just the Jurassic Park ones, and that's really it. Like most of the horror
Okay,
like
excellent,
analogs.
excellent.
Okay,
Because
awesome, awesome.
I was afraid you were gonna see this other one too. I wanted to this was my main recommendation, honestly.
Hmm.
It's a little series that came out a few months ago. It only has one season right now. It's 3 videos, but he made another video that just compiles all of them into one.
Yeah.
It's a little half-hour video. It's for a series called Prehistoric Emergence.
Oh my God, yeah. I've seen little snippets of it. I have not watched it at all.
Okay. You
I've
should
seen a little
definitely
snippet.
watch that because this is, if you like analog horror and you like dinosaurs, um, probably be pretty up your alley. It's it's not really like the scariest, to be honest. But it's more about like the interesting ideas that are presented that you can do with dinosaur horror in general, I think. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I would definitely recommend you check that out. It's pretty cool analog shit. Like I said, it was uploaded only a couple months ago, and I think the guy said he's working on a new episode right at this moment.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Yeah, I did like the aspect. Like, I only saw a snippet. I was like, "That's fucking sick." I was like, "If," because I've always liked the idea of like a horror concept of what if the dinosaurs just came back? How would humanity deal with that? What are the repercussions? Would we get some kind of sickness because they lived? Oh, I mean, besides the chance of being eaten, what are the other consequences environmentally? You know, biologically. Do they carry diseases that we just cannot deal with at all?
Yeah, that is an interesting idea to be sure. I think we'll save more of that conversation for the next episode, though. I think this is probably a good spot for us to wrap
Hmm.
up the first one. I'm pretty satisfied with the coverage we did on Transformers One. Just one more time, like I said before, please go support that movie if you are able to. 'Cause it's great, and I would really like them to make another one.
Yeah. Support the product, support the creators, give love to the Transformers One and everyone behind it. They did a phenomenal job. Brian Tyler, the composer of the soundtrack, fucking great job. He's always been a good composer.
Hmm.
Um, Director, forgetting his name at the time, but for his first for this project, obviously showed his love to the series, and I would 100% trust him with another movie. Uh,
Josh Cooley.
Josh Cooley, yeah, great job, great guy. Love his work.
All right. Well, if that's everything, thank you all for tuning in. We look forward to covering some more media when we get back. Haven't really decided what the next episode's going to be about, but we're definitely going to talk some more about that prehistoric emergence, I think, because I think you'll have some interesting thoughts about that one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I look forward to it.
All right. Uh, have a good day, everybody. And thank you for going beyond the medium.
Bye.